International affairs commentator Doug Herbert is with me here on set. Doug, who exactly was Charlie Kirk?
Yeah, well, he was a Christian evangelical who, at a very early age, he dropped out of college and turned to political activism, militant political activism. And he formed, as you heard, a nonprofit organization called Turning Point USA. And what it is look, it's very mildly billed. It bills itself as just being in favor of fiscal responsibility and free market values and limited government. In fact, what he has done through his vehicle, Turning Point USA, Charlie Kirk, is, as the founder, he has gone around touring campuses across America. He also founded a very popular podcast that draws millions. And he appeals to a giant youth constituency in America. And his message, basically, he goes to college campuses because, as he once says, he sees them as bastions of these liberal left-wing ideologies, sort of the radical left that Donald Trump speaks of. And he once said that universities are not for they don't, as they exist in America, he doesn't see them as being in the pursuit of knowledge. They are rather for the very forceful pushing of a left-wing ideology. And his mission, his self-appointed designated mission, is to sort of go and forcefully persuade through these very, you could say, almost staged and orchestrated types of rallies with debates with students on issues from transgender to climate to family issues, so on and so forth. He takes them on full frontally. It's a very charismatic, very visually compelling exchanges. And he's tried to really change the dialogue. What Turning Point USA, he's also, from his critics' standpoint, been accused of not being just conservative. That's too mild a term for them. They say that his remarks are racist. They say that they are xenophobic. They say that they are misogynist. Obviously, he doesn't see it that way. He sees that more as the radical left trying to just dismiss his views and intolerance on their part. That said, Donald Trump himself has credited Charlie Kirk. It's not just a close ally. Kirk was a close friend of Trump's, has visited the White House frequently, both in the first and second terms. He attended Donald Trump's inauguration. Donald Trump says he was perhaps the galvanizing major factor, him and his Turning Point USA movement, in bringing out the youth vote that helped fuel Trump's victory. He may have even perhaps flipped the state of Arizona for Donald Trump. So when we say he's influential in the MAGA orbit, powerful, and a close Trump ally, absolutely, in the literal sense of those terms, he is about as close to the Trump MAGA universe as you can get, and he was seen as a very pivotal factor in fueling the MAGA movement, especially with the young.
Talk about fueling, Doug. I mean, it does come, doesn't it, a very fraught moment in America. Fears of politically motivated violence on the rise, and it's likely to make the mood even grimmer.
Yeah, Stuart, America has always been in fraught moments, right? Its history is a study of fraught moments. Even in, going back 20th century, right? The 1960s were an era of rampant political assassinations and violence, right? Martin Luther King, John F. Kennedy, his brother Robert Kennedy, all of them gunned down, violent. You saw in the 70s, Vietnam, civil rights movement, you saw bombing after bombing in America. I think there were several dozen bombings in America in the early 70s. It continues to this day. In recent months, we have seen a string of rising, what is often described as politically motivated violence by law enforcement. We've had, in recent months, you can go down the list, right? The burning of the home of the Pennsylvania governor, Josh Shapiro, the targeted killing in broad daylight in Manhattan of the United Healthcare chairman. You have had a Minnesota lawmaker, Democratic House Speaker of Minnesota, shot down, killed, along with her husband in recent months. That, by the way, was not mentioned by Donald Trump in his remarks when he blamed the radical left. You've had judges coming under threats. You have had the talk of more and more political violence on both the left and the right. What I will tell you is the takeaway is violence is an undercurrent throughout American history. It is up until this day. But you can argue, and Donald Trump's critics will argue, that whereas usually after these types of violent incidents, a leader will address the nation and try to heal the rifts by bringing the country together, not pointing a finger of blame at one side or the other. What Donald Trump has done is, at least in his immediate remarks, sure, he is in grief, he is shocked by the killing, but his rhetoric is also a rhetoric of political reckoning and vengeance that echoes those of many of his supporters on the far right. It is now a finger-pointing game. It is a blame game. And on some corners of social media, you have much sharper rhetoric. Donald Trump almost sound moderate in his remarks. Sharper rhetoric we've heard, people saying Democratic Party should be banned. Democrats should be rounded up as extremists, sort of tantamount to terrorists. That's a type of rhetoric that is now proliferating on the internet, in social media. And it's the type of talk that you might say is absolutely antithetical to, opposed to everything that perhaps the country needs at a horrible moment like this, a tragedy like this. Rather than pointing fingers of blame across the divide, you need sobriety, you need sane voices, you need people calling for calm. I'll end with this thought. Robert Pape, who heads up a project in Chicago, the Chicago Project on Security and Threats, they do a survey, and his most recent survey was in May, and he says it's their most worrisome yet. It shows that attitudes towards political violence are growing sharper since January 6, 2021, and the attack by Trump supporters on the Capitol. He says today 40% of Democrats say that they would support removing Trump from office by force. 25% of Republicans say they would support using the military to thwart protests against Donald Trump's agenda. That gives you, in a nutshell, a little sense of the divide in America right now.
Doug, thanks very much. Doug Herbert, international affairs commentator here on France 24.